Hi everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to an unboxing for the base or core set for Keep the Heroes Out. This is a dungeon defense game by Louis Brew. I hope I said that right. From Brew Games. So this is kind of a neat game. It's a cooperative dungeon defense game where you play as monsters. You move around the dungeon, collecting various power-ups, and trying to keep heroes from stealing the treasure out of your dungeon and then stealing your big, massive treasure at the end. There is a way to play solo, so for people that like to play solo, but it is meant to be a cooperative game. It uses big old meeples here, which are really cool. You use a bunch of tokens. And you can move around the board. Each monster you play as has different ways it does different things. Some spawn more, some have better attacking, some have better way of creating or producing resources. And yeah, it's neat. It's also done scenariatively. So there are, you can obviously, after you play all the scenarios, you can make your own things up. But yeah, it has like a bunch of built-in game modes that you can play. So you don't just have to sit down and come up, or you're not just randomly shuffling a deck and seeing what happens every time. There are 20 scenarios in the core game. Then there's also expansions that will add more in there as well. So let's take a look at what some of the stuff in the game is. So of course, we're going to have our full rulebook, and we'll look at kind of how to play it in just a moment. We have our dungeon book, and this will actually explain like kind of the layout of how each story is played, which is really cool. We have a bag here of meeples of various sizes and colors for all our different monsters, and we'll get into looking at all these things a little bit more in depth. We have a bunch of dungeon tiles. These tiles are actually pretty big, and they have the same backs. You can kind of randomly do them if you ever want. We have a giant deck here of cards for each of your monsters. We have basically your monster cards. This is showing like for the Rat King players. And then they have their own special deck. And then the Slime, they have their deck. So on and so forth. Every single Skeleton, Lizard King, Poltergeist, all the way up through, we have a Dragon. So each different monster you get to play as will have its own fairly unique deck to play as. Then we also have, to help out the monsters, we also get item cards. We get some potions, some scrolls, some beasts, and some equipment that they can wield. You can get throughout the game. It then gets shuffled into their deck. So again, it has asymmetrical deck, so every player has a different deck set. But then you also get these guys to kind of like build your decks up as well. We have a bunch of dungeon cards, which are scenarios, so there's like 1, 4, 5, all the way up to set 20, and these will be the specific cards that get shuffled in during each scenario you play, which add various other elements they're playing. So like, just a quick one, if this one comes up, you'll discard a frog token to lose a card. If we jump into another one, this one will summon some extra monsters to the game. This one moves all creatures. So they each have their own build up every time. The only cards that will be in every single one are the heroes. So we have some archers, some warriors, some mages, and some rogues. And these guys will pop up throughout every single scenario, trying to steal your treasure. So that's like the only constant in every game are those guys. And I won't even 100% say that, because there might be some that eliminate some here and there. Then we have a bunch of token boards. So we're going to have some health tokens. We're going to have various resources. We have 5 of each. We have frogs, bones, coins, books, and then traps. Now, traps aren't really resources much. These 4 here are used to like pay to buy extra things or activate certain abilities or deal with certain scenarios. The traps are usually meant to stop heroes from entering. We have a Wave 0 token, which we'll get to in a little bit. We have a first player token, so we know whose turn it is. We have 3 different boards here for various degree of difficulty. So easy, medium, and hard, essentially. And it's just going to show how you're, what you have to be playing as. And then if we flip these all over, all these are double-sided. The first player just has a different side. The difficulty board has an opposite side which adds some rules after you play through the guild deck or the dungeon deck once. You flip this card over, and now you have a new set of difficulty to play. If it runs out, you actually lose the game. So you're not trying to generally win by defeating all the heroes. You want to defeat them so they don't steal your treasure, but the idea is to survive enough attacks. It's not net, so it's like a dungeon. If you ever play a tower defense game, it's very similar to that. You're trying to set up and position things to survive X number of attacks. You don't necessarily have to defeat everything. So now we have some tokens for each of the 4 heroes. Plus there's some portal tokens, some event tokens which will be used very differently from scenario to scenario, and some treasure tokens, which the number on shows how many heroes need to be present to steal your treasure, and the 4 is the one they want. Now on the back sides of those, the heroes get grayed out to show they've been exhausted. The portals become actual portals. The events are going to show some of the different event things that might happen, and the treasures actually show what, if the hero picks up a treasure, what actually happens in that scenario, in that case. Yeah, so those are our basic components and all that stuff. So let's take a look at the rule book and kind of see what we're looking at. Yeah, so there's big giant, a lot of different stuff there. So we're actually hopping there. Let's kind of just look at what it says. For game setup, it's very simple. Beginning of the dungeon, build the dungeon. Begin the game by choosing one of the scenarios in the book. Build it exactly as described in the scenario. Available loot. Shuffle all the beast, potion, equipment, scroll cards together to create the loot deck. Place it face down next to the dungeon with the top 5 cards. Whenever cards acquire, immediately reveal the top card for the deck to fill the empty slot. Still have a spot of 6 cards. Stack of 6 cards with 5 revealed and 1 shuffled. Place your treasure. Place all the treasure tokens face down. Shuffle them when a center asks you to place one in a dungeon room. Pick them up from the random. So we have multiple 1s, multiple 2s, multiple 3s. If it says place a 3, you don't want to know which 3 you're placing. Then prepare the guild. Shuffle the warrior, rogue, mage, and archer cards. Launch the scenario cards, describe a scenario to make the guild deck, place it face down next to the dungeon, and then create a supply token off to the side. So very simple there. Trying to think if they showed a good picture of the game board. So yeah, like just as an example here, later on they show a player turn. This is how the board might look. This will be later in the game. But yeah, you'll have all your tiles set up. You'll have treasures in various rooms, wherever they told you. Some of them might have portals. Some might start with items. Some might not. Just depends on. So again, this is later in the game, so there's already some heroes in the game that have activated. Yeah, each scenario will tell a little bit. So we'll get back into that. We have some information on our character cards, our clan cards. We'll look at those when we get to those. So level of difficulty. Begin the game, decide the difficult level for the play session. Place a guild deck on top of the chosen difficulty. Every time a player ends their turn, draw a card and resolve that many guild cards. So there are 3 different types. There's family for first-timers, families, and casuals. So there are 2 waves of heroes that will play. A wave is whenever the full guild deck runs out. So after every player takes their turn, they do all their actions, they place cards. The heroes will then, the guild card will actually play, trying to flip to find heroes or do scenario cards. After each player's turn, so if there's 4 players, there will be 4 cards will be played each round. But you might go 3-4 rounds before it runs out. Then wave 1 is done. Then you reflip it over and you start it over for wave 2. So you see, as you start with 1 guild card or 2. Challenging for solo players or gamers, you get 2 and 2, and then hardcore, you get 2 and 3. So it's just gonna make it that much harder each time. We have a set of monsters, each with their own unique abilities, and they're falling into 3 classes. So we're gonna look at their abilities in a minute, but they fall into crowd control. They have many attack cards, so you can defeat heroes in a single turn. Defenders summon many monsters with ease. You can better protect treasures and or other monsters. And supporters, you have many activate and move cards, allow you to acquire new cards and help others doing so. So it ends up being a very, again, cooperative game, because you might have a card that can do a lot of attacking, but if they die, then all of a sudden now you're out. So you might want to use other cards to help support them. Maybe one of your smaller guys has, your bigger guy only has 2 monsters that you can have out, whereas you have a smaller monster which can have 5. You might sacrifice a smaller monster rather than your big guy taking damage. So what's the game overview? It's a co-op scenario-based dungeon defense game where the players are monsters trying to protect their treasure from being plundered by the so-called heroes who persist on invading the dungeon. The active player who has a token takes a turn by going through all of their turn spaces. At the end of their hero invasion, if the game hasn't finished, the active player passes the active player token to the player on the left. This player becomes the active player and it's time to take their turns. If you reach the end of the second wave's guild deck, congratulations, you win the game. At any time your treasure token on the battlefield is plundered, you immediately lose. So we'll have your lair, where your clan card is with your extra meeples if you have any, your tactic deck, your play area, and your discard pile. So during your turn, you're going to have these symbols here that kind of help show off what you're doing, but you're going to get to play cards from your hand. You can play as many or as few cards as you choose to. There's no cost to playing these cards. So this isn't like I have to spend 3 points or anything. Nope, you have a card in your hand, you get to do whatever its effect is if you can. After you're done playing cards, you refresh the loot. You may discard a tactic card from your hand to renew from 1 up to 5 loot cards. So basically, if you don't like the loot that's out, you can, go ahead and get rid of one of your regular cards to try and refresh all them and get some different ones. Cleaning up, you discard all cards you have played to the discard pile. If you have less than 5 cards, draw your attack decks. You have 5 cards in your hand. And this kind of plays into the deck builder aspect because you might get more loot or you're going to get other different cards in your deck. You're not buying new cards. It's just because you could buy a loot card and you might end up with that later on in a later turn. Then the Heroes Invasion. At this point, based on your chosen difficulty, the wave you are currently in, draw and resolve the relevant cards from the top of the deck. There are no more cards in the guild deck, and this is the first time you reach the end of the deck, reshuffle all guild cards. You're now starting the second wave of attack. If you reach the end of the second guild wave, you have won the game. And then finally end your turn. After the Hero's Invasion hasn't finished, active player passes the token to the player on the left. The side of your choice, the active player, does not affect the rules. You can use blue or red. It doesn't really matter. So, important, in a 4-player game, for example, you'll face 4 hero invasions in a round, 1 on each player's turn. And again, that could be, if you're playing easy mode and you only have 1 card, that's 4 cards you're drawing. If you're playing hard mode, then you had to do 2 on each turn, so you'll have 8 cards that you're going to be drawing. So the deck will run out that much quicker. There are various actions with various symbols on there: drawing, activating, moving, attacking. We'll kind of go over them when we see them come across them. There are portals, traps, various other effects. I kind of want to just get into some of the other stuff here. We have dungeon rooms. So each dungeon has a special icon that's going to let you do certain things. Some are very basic, like just place a resource. Some let you activate. You can spend things to trade your resources for extra item cards. That's how you purchase those. There are a couple that have very special rules, which we'll just go over when we look at each dungeon in itself. There's 3 different ones that have special rules. How does Hero Invasion work? So we kind of want to look at this. So you're going to resolve a guild card. You always resolve 1 guild card at a time before drawing the next. If there are multiple heroes to resolve, the players choose collectively which to resolve first. Keep the heroes at bay. You need to summon a new hero. If there are no more in the token flag, then reactivate all exhausted heroes of that class and other heroes in the same room as them. So this is one way that's just really tricky because there can be a lot of comboing with the heroes doing stuff. They can, you didn't take enough of them out, so they can reactivate. They can keep reactivating over and over. So instead, it's just like, I play a card, this hero does this. You might end up with this does this, which triggers this, which does this, which triggers all these guys to start over. Now they all get each take turns. It's then could trigger this, trigger that. It sounds confusing and complicated when I say it like that, but when we kind of go through it and you go step by step, it becomes a lot easier. So you can resolve a card. There's two different types of cards. Hero card, you must summon one hero of the class shown in one of the two different rooms that match their room type. Or you get a scenario card. You follow specific scenarios, read the dungeon book for more information. Discard guild cards are open information. You may check them or even reorganize them to make calculating odds easier. Below you can see the icons, names, and the rooms. So what that means is there are two hero, two rogues, two archers, two wizards, and two mages. Or two of each hero class. So if you know you've already drawn one of them, you can have them set aside so you can see that. And you're like, okay, I know I've drawn one of these, and I've drawn two of that, and I've already played two of this one. You know how many more heroes might be coming up. So you can kind of guesstimate the plan for some of that. So it's kind of nice there. Then they have show off. So after a hero is summoned, they immediately do their special ability. So they'll have kind of listed on their cards as well. This game does a lot of stuff where outside of the actual rule book, there's not almost any description on the cards. It's all visual, which is really nice. There's lots of iconography. Ugh. Check the room. If there are traps in the room, resolve them one at a time, deal 1 damage to the hero, and then discarding. So warrior, rogue, archer summon their cells, then flip their token. If the hero is still active, you guys can proceed to step 4. So yeah, they pop in. You can place traps, you might take them out fairly quickly. Then Spire. If a hero is summoned or charged into a room where other exhausted heroes, reactivate all of them by flipping them to their active side. So it says, when a hero attacks, plungers, or waits, flip the token from the active to exhausted side. His turn's done. But if he's summoned or charged in a room and they're not killed by a trap, inspire all previously exhausted heroes. And then they get to all react again. Attack. If there's a monster in the room, as a hero, exhaust the hero and deal 1 damage to the monster. Any monster in the room may use defense cards as a reaction to this attack to defend it. If the monster dies, discard from the dungeon back to the lair. The monster has more than 1 health, give it a wound token. Then Plunder. If there are no monsters in the room, and the active heroes is equal to or greater than the value of the treasure, exhaust the number of heroes to gain the plunder. Flip the treasure over and then use its effect. Or wait. If there are no monsters in the room and there is a treasure, but the number of active heroes is less than the value, hero will wait for reinforcements. So the rogue is summoned to the beast trainer. They'll show off, discard the trap or special ability, and then wait. Exhaust themselves because they need another hero. Then later on, the mage is summoned in the same room. They'll inspire the exhausted rogue, flipping them to the active side, plunder the treasure by exhausting both of them. So yeah, they're going to pop in, do an effect, then possibly die to a trap, reactivate all heroes, and then attack everybody. If there are no monsters to attack, then they're going to try and steal a treasure. If there's no treasure, they're going to wait. If there is a treasure, but no monsters left, they're going to wait for someone else to come help them haul the treasure out, or open it up, or however you want to look at it. If there are no monsters, nor no treasure in the room, all active heroes in the room at the same time move to an adjacent room closest to the vault. When the heroes move in the room, they perform steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 again for each one of them. So then once they move into a new room, then they're going to look for traps again, activate more heroes, try and attack, try and plunder treasure, or wait. Until eventually they're all exhausted. They've exhausted from attacking, they've exhausted from plundering treasure, or they've waited. Or they've died. The only thing they don't do after they move is they don't reactivate their special ability. That's only when they first appear. Whenever guild cards resolve, all here in the dungeons are exhausted. The next player takes their token. So again, this seems like it could be very complicated. It could go, but you kind of get, once you've played through a few rounds, you can actually move through pretty quickly. This right here is just sort of explaining how a full game works. I'm not going to go through all of this right now. I probably won't even go through all this anyhow, but it's a really neat way. It just shows off all it does. I'll kind of pause it here if you want to look at it. But it's basically saying the Ratkin player here is using, I'm just going to briefly describe it. He's using a special action where he's going to try and check the deck to send heroes to the cell. Sends a warrior to the cell, which gets him 3 extra cards. Now he has 8 cards in his hand to use. Then he's going to play some cards to summon some extra characters. He's going to move them around. Then we get the parts down here. He can use some of them to activate to gain some extra tokens. He's going to add some extra traps down here by using some stuff in that room. Then we get to the next one. He's going to move some of his guys up. You see 5 and 6, he's moving some guys up there. He takes some of the tokens with him. And then with 7 and 8, and 7, he's going to attack and defeat one of the heroes. Gets rid of them, which is always nice. But he can attack multiple guys, so you can take out both of them. With 8, he's going to be back up at the top. He's going to discard his frog to draw a potion. So now that goes to his discard pile, so he might draw that later. In 9, over on this side, he's going to take out one of the heroes. Again, just to get rid of them. And then he's going to refresh some loot. If he had cards in his hand, he could. But since he played all 8 cards, he can't do anything with the loot cards. And then he's going to clean up and discard and redraw his hand back to 5. So cool. Now, if he only played, out of his 8 cards, he only played 4, and he only had 4 left, he'd only have drawn 1 card. Then the hero phase comes. And again, this is where it does seem a little tricky, but it actually goes by pretty fast. So, the first guild card being real is Rogue in 2 different sword rooms. This means you place her in each one of those rooms that have that icon, and we'll kind of look at them. So you put one there and one there. She has a special ability where she eliminates traps, so that gets rid of that. But we played this one first. It's like play 1 to 1 room. So it jumps in here. First thing she's going to do is play her ability, remove traps. No traps in the room. Then she decides, can she attack? Yep. So she attacks the dragon. Done. Her turn's over. She exhausts. This one's going to drop in here, eliminate a trap, and then it's going to wait because there's no other monsters, but there's a treasure. So it's going to sit around and wait for that. So those 2 are both exhausted, so you can, so they're going to kind of just be done there. Then the second guild card was a warrior, but it has 2 different mystic eyes, so he plays them in the 2 different spots here. So in the first one, he's going to drop into the graveyard, and he can discard 2 tokens, so he gets sort of 2 bones in there. And then he's going to exhaust to get the treasure that's a 1, so he's going to grab this treasure. The Warrior of the Study then inspires, will reactivated, so this was a heal, so this warrior will be reactivated, flipped on the active side. The Warrior in the Study down here will summon both, he reactivates both archers. There's nothing for him to get rid of, so he doesn't get it. They have 3, so they plunder the treasure, and they get rid of them. It is a cell, so he draws a card and reveals for a character is the archer. Since the card you draws an archer, she uses a ranged attack to deal 1 ability. So even though she's going to the jail cell, she still uses her summoning ability. She comes in, she does the damage to one of these guys down here, and then she's exhausted in the jail cell waiting for someone to come rescue her. The Warrior of the Graveyard, who is healed, now comes back to him. Moves into the Beast Framer, taking 1 damage from the trap before he has a chance to inspire. So he cancels out the trap, takes out that before he can revive the rogue. And then I draw a 3rd card, which was the Mage. So this is where it can get a little bit crazy again. So right here we have this. You place him on the Apocryphy and in the library. Summoning the library, there's no monster or treasure there, so he will charge in the next room closer to the vault through the passage. When he enters the forge, he inspires the exhausted rogue, and both of them now exhaust to attack, do 2 more damage to the dragon. So he starts here, there's nothing for him to do, so he moves here, unflips them, they both attack, and do 2 more damage to them. Now, if the dragon was defeated, the next time they might be able to loot the treasure chest, but if he's not, he'll sit around and still attack them. And then over in the Apocryphy, up here, he will exhaust to attack their active monster there, removing the dungeon, as all 3 guild cards have been played. Now, even though if he could get up into here, he'd be able to resurrect everybody, but since he has to move always towards the biggest treasure, and there's already a treasure in the room, there's no reason for him to ever move up. Yeah, so that's basically the way that goes. So that is our overall rules. I want to look at the dungeon book really quick. So on the back side, they have how the hero invasion works as a flowchart. Again, it seems super complicated, but it's pretty simple. You get into it. They're gonna come in, do an ability, and then it's just they're going to try and see like, is there a trap they take damage? If not, you're just gonna ignore it. No trap, move on next thing. No monster, move on next and look for a treasure. No treasure, then they move. They're just gonna kind of flow, and as you start playing the game, you'll just kind of recognize that stuff, and you won't have to stop and be like, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? You just see it, and you'll get used to it. So it does flow. There's a lot of steps, but they do flow. I don't want to go too much into the dungeon book, just because I would like to keep it as a secret for people who want to play through the scenarios. I do want to look at them. We may look at the first one so you can see how it's set up and some idea of it. And we will look at all the cards. I think we're going to do a part 2 video here. We'll look at the cards in part 2. But again, I'll kind of have that listed as a spoiler in case you don't want to see all of them until you actually play through the scenario. But here we have, so Dungeon Book has 1 through 20. They are designed to play in order as a story. And that's the idea of it. You can play them as one-offs however you want, especially after you beat it the first time. But here's going to show some different stuff. They might have initial rules, ongoing rules, event rules, and triggered rules. Setting up is going to show how to set up your dungeon. They're going to have these gray arrows on here. They're going to show what way the heroes are always going to move to try and get to a treasure. Because they always want to try and keep moving towards the 4. So if there's multiple paths, they're not going to backtrack up to go after one treasure in the corner. They're going to move towards the next treasure they can. So there are a couple different ways to play the game. True Solo. You can play True Solo using only one monster per choice. Choose any difficulty and no changes. 2 to 4 players. As a co-op game, really shine playing with friends. Try the same scenario using different clans. See you'll feel it comfortable. Try playing at higher difficulties. 5 to 6 players. If you don't mind the added downtime, the game can support 5 to 6 players, where you may play family difficulty without any changes. In Challenger or Hardcore mode, start the game at Wave 0, so special token there. Reveal 2 cards at a time. After Wave 0 is completed, remove Wave 0 and produce Wave 1 and then Wave 2. So it gets you an extra round of deck of cards, just because there's more players. So it's going to take you longer to set stuff up before the deck would run out. Yeah, when you play heroes, you can choose to play various scenarios in 2 different modes, either as one-shot scenarios where you set up one individual scenario and you're done, or play a group in the following Chronicle rules. So the Chronicle rules are kind of neat. One-shot, just set it up, pick stuff, play it however you want to do it. There are some stuff you say you can't play as certain characters in certain modes. Chronicle mode. So this is your first game, this is not for you. Just because this is a kind of a setup idea. So in Chronicle mode, you play scenarios in chapters. Each chapter is 4 scenarios you must play back-to-back in specific order. Some chapters will specify clans you may not use in any of the scenarios. Whether you win or lose a scenario, you always move to the next one. When you start a scenario during setup, discard cards from your starting hand. As many cards as you might have scenarios you lost in the same chapter. If you win the last chapter, you unlock the ability. So if you're playing Exquisite Cuisine, you're going to play 1, 14, 13, and 15. So you're not going to play them in order of 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to play these in certain orders. It's going to say you can't use the Skeletons or the Dragon King, and you unlock the Toasting ability. Well, it's neat there. So you play all 4 games in a row. So it's going to be a little bit longer. You don't have to play them all like one day. You could play 1 or 2 here, 4 days in a row, or you could play 2 and 2, however works for your gaming group. But yeah, every time you lose a scenario, you start with less cards in your hand. So the first one you start with 5 cards. Next one, if you lost the first one, now you start with 4 cards. So if you keep losing them all, you can eventually get to the end, but you're going to have 1 card to start, which is going to make beating the last one very difficult. Then we have Puppy Mom, Crime Poetry, Dungeon Palooza, and Going Corporate. So Through Thick and Thin, surviving each challenge selected. So alright, so they're going to be a little bit, try to go any farther, there's going to be spoilers for the story of their campaign. So yeah, if you don't want to know what any of these other special unlock abilities are, if you want to wait till you actually play through them to see what they are, again, do this watch my video, spoilers, so thanks for watching. Come back, check out part 2, we're actually going to then go through all the cards in the deck, just because otherwise this video is going to be really long. Otherwise, yeah, we're going to go ahead and look at this. We're going to maybe look at the first scenario, because that's when everyone will have to jump into. And then we'll look at maybe look at one of the later ones to see how it changes. So, as you play through the game, you're going to unlock Toasting. When you resolve a potion, select one dungeon where you have at least one monster. All players with a monster present in the same room benefit from the potion's effect. That's kind of neat. So you can unlock these are just optional abilities you can choose to use. They have piggybacking riders. You may move carrying a smaller monster along with you. Instead of a resource or a trap, that monster cannot carry anything and has to agree to being carried. The size of the monster shown below, for example, a dragon may not carry other monsters. Now, there is a sequel expansion to this game called Boss Battles. In that, they actually changed this version, this mode, so they have monsters grouped by large, medium, and small. So all the large monsters can carry medium monsters. All the medium can carry small, and small can't carry any other monsters. Instead of just having it this one by size. I would recommend if you pick up that, or even if you don't, you might want to go look up the rule book and maybe have that printed out or as a reference, a picture on your phone or something. If you're playing this, because I think that's a little bit easier to memorize. It's kind of like group size of monsters as opposed to like trying to remember that the Poltergeist is bigger than the Witch, but the Dragon King is smaller than the Gnoll. Because the meeples might not always be the exact same, might not always size-wise there. If you just beat part 3, you get Heist Crew. You may discard a tactics card from your hand without resolving it to another player with a monster in the same room to play and resolve immediately one card in their hand. For example, a slime, you discard one of your defense cards, cast a dragon to attack on your turn. So that's a really cool extra gameplay element as well. Because some of these are just going to make the game maybe a little bit more easier to play. Guys can help you out, add some of that cooperative. We have Souvenir you can unlock. You may resolve and activate action in a room with another monster to give it one loot card from your hand. This goes to their hand, and when play will go to their discard pile. So basically, you can have a monster that can maybe produce loot quicker, can pick up loot, and then basically trade it to other players. And then Die Hard. Replace the regular heroes with epic ones from Scenario 20 during every scenario you play from now on. These cards are not considered scenario cards during the resolution of throwing a hero to the cell. You will resolve them as if they were a hero card. So basically just add harder difficulty. Alright, so let's look at Scenario 1 just to kind of see what we're setting up. So here's going to be our board. It's going to show all the different things. Now all of these look like they're all orientated up and down. You might have some that might turn. Oh, we got one here. So this one's turned sideways because you have the little scroll icon. This one's actually upside down. Because it just depends on where the doors are. Because the doors always need to be able to lead into one of the side rooms. So we have Witch's Cauldron. Has a little story thing in there. I'm not going to worry about reading all that. But it does have special steps. So shuffle the Witch cards marked with the number 1 along with the hero cards to create the guild deck. So some scenarios will have more cards than others. Some have less. And then special rules. Lunchtime delight. The event token marks the room in which the Witch's Cauldron is located. Every time you draw a Witch card, the Witch asks for frog stew. If you have a frog token in the room with the Witch's Cauldron, you please your appetite, discard a frog, and nothing else happens. If you don't have a frog, she curses you and all other players immediately discard tactics of their choice from their hand. So that's going to kind of show up on her card. Pay a frog or discard a card. So it's one of your options. So yeah, when you start out the thing, it's going to show you're going to place 2 portal cards that need to be fixed right there and there. Otherwise, you're going to place those treasures randomly placed and the event down there. So if we let's just jump to one of the later ones to see what one of those look like. So here's a different one. So number 11, a dragon's treasure. So you can see how some turn this way, some turn that way. that way, different directions. This one's, instead of being a round, it's all big straight thing, but probably, if someone's starting here, shows the arrows are going to move this way, then they're going to move this way, then up into the treasure. But a guy here is going to move this way. A guy here could either move this way or this way. So yeah, it's, other than having maybe a roundabout way, depending on where heroes are summoned, they're going to kind of be going there versus having the other one where it was all at the very end. They could come at it from multiple directions. So a little bit harder to defend, because now you have to defend from 3 sides as opposed to just one room. This also has a special set. Players cannot play as the dragon in this scenario because he's the monster in there that you're playing in. Shuffle the dragon cards with the number 11. Unlock the hero cards. Search for the lost werewolf. Every time you reveal a dragon card, the dragon starts to get impatient. For not finding their pet, add 2 event tokens to the vault. If there are 4 or more tokens in the vault, place the dragon in the vault. She just returned empty-handed from trying to find the werewolf in town. She's really mad and will attack everything in her sight. Activate the Mad Dragon rule. The dragon is already in the dungeon. When you reveal the card, draw 2 cards from the guild deck and send the relevant heroes to the cell. And then Mad Dragon triggered. The dragon is considered an enemy to all. After every player's turn, the dragon will attack anything that is in range distance from the vault, dealing 1 damage to all monsters and heroes adjacent to it. To calm the dragon, you need to deal 9 damage to her. If you do so, remove the dragon all events from the dungeon. She is now back on the search for the werewolf. At the end of the game, if you still have treasure at the value of 4 in the vault, but you also have the dragon in your dungeon, you lose the game. So you need to remove the dragon from the dungeon and keep your treasure alive. So it's kind of a very interesting. So it's kind of neat. Some of these are going to play against certain guys. Like that, we have just quick one. This one has you can't use the skeletons because you're going to shuffle the necromancers and some skeletons into the deck. This one's going to use the dragon and the puppies card, which will use gnoll puppies. So you can't use the gnolls in there. They're activating as puppies for the game. Yeah, some different ones when you use slime. So yes, it's kind of cool because you're going to actually, as you play through, you're going to sometimes use the monsters. Some aren't going to get it. That is what we have for this. Yeah, we'll go through and look at a little bit more in depth at all the cards, all the boards, all that stuff in video part 2, just because there's so much to go through. Yeah, this is a really fun little cooperative game. Dungeon Defender, so if you like that kind of style gaming where you got, it's puzzle-based, scenario-based, but since it's not, I have to do A to stop B, and I have to do, thing C to stop thing D, you kind of know, but since it's still random from a deck, you can't plan out a full puzzle and 100% be like, I can do this to do this to do this to do this. And I beat scenario A. Now I never have to play it again because every time I play it, I'll know how to beat it. You'll have an idea. You play again with the witch. You know you're going to need frogs to appease her. So you're going to maybe have a player, have a clan member, whoever you're playing as your monster, is going to keep trying to get more frogs and keep getting to where you can keep appeasing her all the time so you don't keep losing other cards. So you can even have one, if you're playing a 4-player game, have one person just focus on that, or have people tag team it. One person's creating frogs, one has better movement abilities, moving frogs down to her dungeon. You could be doing stuff like that. But again, it might depend on which characters you pick. Some guys are going to be able to move quicker, some guys are going to be able to do that. Sometimes you might say, you know what, we're just going to not really worry about the whole frog thing, and we're just going to take a card every turn and just focus on the rest of it. Kind of different ideas there. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed this part of the video for Keep Out the Heroes. Come back for part 2 where we will look over all the cool cards and talk about the abilities. See you guys there. Bye.